He was just an intern, fixing a fuse, but her whispered words in the dark office stopped time. Forget I'm your boss. What happened next would haunt him every sleepless night. I never imagined that my entry into the working world would pull me into a situation like this, one that would challenge everything I thought I knew about boundaries and desires. At 22, I was Harlan Voss, straight out of a 2-year graphic design program at a local community college in Oregon, feeling like I was grasping at straws for a real start. I'd snagged this internship at Apex Creative, a modest marketing firm nestled in the subdued suburb of Elmwood, Northern California. The office sat in an old warehouse on Juniper Lane, its brick walls echoing with the faint history of industrial days and large windows framing the twisting roads that climb toward the ancient redwood groves. It wasn't the flashy agency I'd dreamed of, but it covered my rent for a cramped studio apartment on the town's outskirts, and I convinced myself it was a foothold in the adult world. The firm was spearheaded by Alara Thorne, the founder and unquestioned leader. I'd glimpsed her during my interview, moving through the open workspace with an authority that commanded attention without a word. She appeared to be in her late 30s, perhaps touching 40, her presence marked by a poised elegance that spoke of years navigated with quiet determination. Her dark hair was often swept into a casual bun, and those piercing hazel eyes seemed to dissect intentions at a glance. She didn't hover over us, but her directives carried weight, making the small team, myself, 2 senior designers, and Mira at reception, snap to focus. My tasks were straightforward: drafting layouts, assembling digital mock-ups, and handling the overflow of creative chores. I answered directly to Alara most days, given the lean staff. I'd ferry her morning coffee or deliver hard copies of designs, always maintaining that crisp professionalism. "Solid effort, Harlan," she'd remark with a brief nod, her tone even and composed. No idle chatter, no personal detours. I was merely the intern, invisible in the best way. It all shifted on a stormy Thursday in the tail end of spring. The sky over Elmwood loomed heavy and slate gray, transforming the streets into glistening reflections that mirrored the overcast mood. I was hunched at my desk, absorbed in refining a logo for a nearby brewery, when the electricity stuttered. Lights buzzed erratically, dimmed to a flicker, then stabilized momentarily before plunging us into shadow again. Groans rippled through the office as screens went dark, the air conditioner's drone silencing abruptly. From her office, Alara's voice cut through the discontent like a steady anchor. "Harlan, mind checking the breaker in the basement storage?" Mira stepped out for lunch and the teams tied up on calls. "On it," I called back, snatching my phone to use as a light. The basement stairs groaned under my weight, leading to a cool, dimly lit space crammed with dusty files, surplus furniture, and the outdated electrical panel. I'd ventured down once before for old project archives. Flipping open the panel's door, I spotted the tripped switch for the main circuit and reset it. Upstairs, the relieved exhales confirmed success as power hummed back to life. Returning to my station, I noted the rain intensifying, hammering the windows with relentless urgency. Alara emerged from her office, arms laden with folders, and paused at my desk, depositing them with a deliberate placement. "Appreciate that. You're resourceful beyond the screen, it seems." I shrugged off the compliment, a warmth creeping up my neck despite the chill in the air. "No trouble. My father was an electrician. He drilled the essentials into me before relocating to Arizona." Her lips curved into a subtle smile, and she rested against my desk's edge, a casual stance I'd never seen from her. It was the first time she didn't immediately retreat. Fortunate for the team, our previous intern struggled with basics like swapping a bulb. Her gaze held mine a beat longer, and I caught the delicate creases at her eyes' corners, traces of accumulated experiences, perhaps laughter or weariness. She straightened abruptly. "These need digitizing by close of business." "Manageable?" "Definitely," I assured her, nodding. As she departed, A peculiar shift lingered in the atmosphere, intangible yet palpable. I dismissed it as imagination. She was simply being courteous. The afternoon slogged forward amid the tempest's fury. Thunder growled intermittently, rattling the glass panes. By mid-afternoon, Ilara summoned a brief huddle in the conference room, a compact area with a lengthy table and a whiteboard perpetually scented with marker residue. We brainstormed for an upcoming client, a boutique hotel chain seeking a refresh. Seniors floated ideas, sleek minimalism, natural hues. I observed silently, scribbling notes, until Ilara pivoted to me. "Harlan, you've been fixated on that doodle. Share your thoughts." I paused, pen suspended. "The properties are mountain set, near historic mining sites. Why not weave in subtle vintage nods, like gold rush echoes, refined for today, understated, avoiding caricature?" She considered, head inclined. "Intriguing angle. Develop prototypes by tomorrow." The session concluded, and as colleagues dispersed, I lingered to wipe the board clean. Ilara collected her materials when the power jolted once more, a sharp crack echoing from within the walls. Darkness enveloped us fully, emergency lights casting an eerie crimson hue. "Frustrating," she exhaled, a rare glimpse of exasperation fracturing her poise. "This structure's wiring is outdated. Harlan, another look at the breaker?" "I'll join you. Teach me the process for future reference." We descended together, her footsteps echoing precisely on the concrete. The basement's confines amplified in the subdued glow, shadows dancing over stacked crates. I exposed the panel, but this wasn't a simple flip. A fuse appeared scorched, edges blackened. "We'll need a replacement," I observed, illuminating it with my phone. "The hardware store on Maple Street is nearby. I can dash over." "In this downpour? You'll be drenched," she replied, arms folded as she inspected. "But productivity halts without it. Proceed. Use the company card from my desk." I agreed, borrowing an umbrella from the entry rack. The trek was brisk, past sodden shop fronts and smeared vehicle lights. Returning soaked regardless, I found the office vacated. The team had surrendered to the weather. Ilara labored by laptop in her office, screen casting a solitary glow on her features. "Secured it," I announced, displaying the fuse. "Won't take long." She glanced up, illuminated ethereally. "You're invaluable. Let's restore it before my battery fades." In the basement anew, I demonstrated the swap, avoiding live wires, securing the new piece. Our hands grazed inadvertently as she steadied the light. The contact was fleeting, yet it sparked an awareness unrelated to circuits. She withdrew swiftly, clearing her throat. "Done," I declared as overhead lights revived. "Operational." Ascending in quiet tandem, the rain symphony persisted. At the summit, she halted. "Harlan, the storm's unrelenting. Your place is across town, correct? Ride it out here. I've surplus takeout in the fridge, Chinese remnants from midday." "Certain? I hate to intrude," I responded, caught off guard. She dismissed the concern. "Absolutely. Repayment for dual repairs today." We migrated to the break room, a snug alcove with a microwave and table gazing at the deluge. She warmed the dishes, noodles tangled with vegetables, steamed dumplings, and we dined initially in companionable hush. Dialogue sparked lightly, client quirks, impending deadlines. Gradually, it veered personal. "What drew you to Elmwood?" she inquired, coiling a noodle. "Not a local, are you?" "Grew up in rural Oregon. Chased opportunities here," I shared, pausing. "You? Building this from ground up?" She affirmed, gaze softening. 10 years ago, post-divorce, craved independence." The revelation dangled, vulnerable in the steam's haze. "Tough road," I ventured cautiously. "Yet, thriving now." Her smile faltered slightly, sustained by drive and due dates. "Your input today was sharp, not just fixes, the meeting spark, potential shines." Her praise resonated deeply. As precipitation waned, we conversed further. Design evolutions, admired creators. Her laughter emerged, authentic and warming the space. By dusk's arrival, past 7, the tempest subsided. "Time to head," I said, rising, grateful for the meal. "Welcome," she replied, escorting me. At the threshold, she added, "Tomorrow, Harlan." That evening, in my dim apartment, the interaction replayed endlessly. Mere kindness, I rationalized. Yet her unguarded moment clung persistently. I redirected to pending tasks, suppressing unrest. Friday dawned routine, but Alara paused at my desk midday. "Harlan, review those prototypes?" In her office, prints splayed, shoulders proximate, her fragrance, subtle blooms, enveloped me. She traced my lines, suggesting warms. Eyes locked, the veneer thinned. "Agreed," I rasped. Week's end blurred, peppered with fragments, shared pauses, weekend queries. Innocent, yet I noted her form's grace. Neck's arc, beautifully seasoned, a decade plus my senior. "Admiration," I insisted. "Boss, untouchable." Friday, post-lunch, she summoned. "Pitch next week. Join, present yours." "Me?" Stunned. "Intern only." "More," she asserted. Evening. Office emptied. We refined. Sunset bathed the space, chairs adjacent. Hands collided on the mouse. "Apologies," I mumbled. She held, eyes probing. "Harlan, set aside my role momentarily." Smile gentle, unforeseen. "Honest opinion on this?" Pulse surged. Question veiled more. Solid, but... Dialogue extended into night. Work yielding to life. Her ex's shadow. Firm's rebirth. My doubts surfaced. Age loomed unspoken, intensifying. 10 struck. She reclined. "Wrap up. Thanks for lingering." "Pleasure," I gathered. Doorway, arm touch. "Safe drive." Contact echoed through weekend. Monday. Project rush. Paired directly. Hours confined. Brainstorming. Tension mounted. Chuckles. Stares. Midweek. Evident. Her watches. Enigmatic. Evening. Off-clock non-profit aid. "Personal," she noted. Pizza ordered. She confided isolation. Listened. Drawn inexorably. Boss. Elder. Impossible. Yet her gaze... This was merely the onset. He had no inkling how swiftly control could slip. You won't believe what unfolds next, but it's the kind of turn that lingers forever. The morning after that late-night talk in the break room, I woke up with Alara's words tangled in my thoughts, like a song I couldn't shake. Her vulnerability, the way she'd let slip that raw edge of loneliness, clung to me as I drove through Elmwood's quiet streets, the early fall air crisp and heavy with the scent of damp leaves. Juniper Lane came into view, its old oaks casting long shadows over the converted warehouse that housed Apex Creative. I parked in the gravel lot, the crunch under my tires grounding me, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying her laughter, the warmth of her voice, the moment she'd rested against my desk. I gripped the steering wheel, telling myself to snap out of it. She was Alara Thorne, my boss, a woman who'd built an empire from ashes, someone whose life was layers deeper than mine. I was just Harlan Voss, 22, barely scraping by, with no business letting my thoughts wander where they did. Inside, the office hummed with its usual rhythm. Mira at the front desk, her headset slightly crooked as she juggled calls, the faint clatter of keyboards from the senior designers, Jonas and Lila, across the open space. My desk was a mess of sketches, sticky notes, and a cold coffee mug I hadn't bothered to clear. I glanced toward Alara's glass-walled office at the back, where she was already immersed, typing with that focused intensity. Her dark hair was pulled back, as always, and the morning light caught the sharp lines of her profile. She didn't look up, and I exhaled, unsure if I was relieved or let down. The day was packed with prep for the hotel pitch. I buried myself in refining the vintage-inspired logo, tweaking fonts and gradients until my eyes ached. The work was a lifeline, a way to drown out the noise in my head. Around noon, Alara's voice broke through my focus. "Harlan, let's review the slides." She stood at her office door, gesturing me in, her tone all business. I grabbed my laptop and joined her, settling into the chair beside her desk. The space smelled faintly of her perfume, floral, understated, like a garden after rain. We leaned over her computer, scrolling through the presentation, our shoulders so close I could feel the warmth of her arm through her blouse. She pointed out adjustments, a bolder font, a smoother transition, her finger brushing mine as we both reached for the trackpad. It happened once, twice, each time lingering just a fraction longer than necessary. My pulse quickened, but I kept my eyes on the screen, forcing focus. "This slide needs more contrast," she said, her voice steady, but when I glanced at her, her hazel eyes held mine for a beat too long. "Got it," I managed, my throat tight. "I'll tweak it." "Good," she said, leaning back, her fingers tapping the desk lightly. "You're picking this up fast, Harlan, faster than I expected." I scratched the back of my neck, heat creeping up. "Just trying to keep pace with you." Her lips curved into that small, disarming smile, the one that made the room feel smaller. "You're doing more than that." The moment stretched, heavy with something unspoken, until Mira's knock shattered it. "Alara, clients on line 2. She nodded, her expression snapping back to professional. "I'll take it. Harlan, finalize those prints by end of day, yeah?" "On it," I said, standing quickly, grateful for the escape. As I left, I felt her gaze linger, but when I glanced back, she was already on the phone, her posture rigid, all traces of that fleeting warmth gone. That evening, the office emptied early, Friday energy pulling everyone toward weekend plans. I stayed late, partly for the deadline, partly because I knew Alara would too. By 7 p.m. it was just us, the silence of the office broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning and the occasional creak of the old building settling. I was exporting files when she appeared, holding 2 steaming cups from the break room's battered coffee machine. "Thought you could use a boost," she said, setting one on my desk, her fingers brushing the edge of a sketch I'd left out. "Thanks," I said, taking the cup, the warmth grounding me. "You're sticking around too?" She leaned against my desk, sipping her coffee, her blouse slightly unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the delicate curve of her collarbone. She was beautiful, not in the polished way of magazine covers, but in a lived-in, real way. Her late 30s, carrying a quiet strength, a story etched in the faint lines around her eyes. "Deadlines don't respect weekends," she said, her tone light, but her gaze steady. "No plans tonight? A guy your age should be out there, not stuck here with spreadsheets." I chuckled, shaking my head. "My plans are pretty much pizza and reruns, not exactly living the dream." Her laugh was soft, genuine, like the one I'd heard during our takeout dinner. "I get that. I'm more of a wine and novel type myself, though I haven't had time for either lately." She paused, twirling her cup. "What about you, Harlan? What brought you to Elmwood, really?" I hesitated, caught off guard by the shift to personal. Small-town Oregon wasn't cutting it. Too quiet, too stuck. I figured California had more to offer, a chance to start something. I glanced at her. "You built this place from nothing, right?" "What's your story?" Her expression softened, and she set her cup down, crossing her arms loosely. "Yeah. Started Apex 10 years ago, after my marriage fell apart. Needed something to pour myself into, something that was mine." Her voice carried a weight, like she was handing me a piece of herself she rarely shared. It's been my lifeline, but it's also isolating. The word hung there, raw and unguarded. I wanted to reach out, to say something that matched the depth of her confession, but all I managed was, "That's rough. But what you've done here, it's incredible." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's a lot of late nights and stubbornness, but seeing someone like you, with fresh ideas, it reminds me why I started." She picked up one of my sketches, her fingers tracing the lines. "This is good. You see things differently. It's refreshing." I swallowed, unsure how to respond to the warmth in her tone. "Thanks. I'm just trying to keep up." She set the sketch down and stood, but didn't leave. Instead, she lingered, her gaze drifting to the window where the last light of day faded over the hills. "Don't stay too late, Harlan. You've got a life outside this place." But she didn't move, and neither did I. The silence was heavy, charged, like the air before a lightning strike. Over the weekend, I couldn't shake her. Every moment, the brush of hands, her laughter, the way she'd said, "isolating," played on repeat. I told myself it was nothing, that I was reading too much into professional kindness. She was my boss, a woman with a decade and a half on me, someone whose world I barely understood. But by Monday, when I walked back into Apex, I was a tangle of nerves, overanalyzing every glance. The hotel pitch went smoothly. Alara led with confidence, and I pitched my vintage concept, her nods giving me courage. The clients ate it up, and afterward, she clapped my shoulder, her touch firm but warm. "You killed it, Harlan. Drinks on me tonight." We ended up at the Rusty Anchor, a dimly lit bar on Beckman Street with worn wooden booths and a jukebox crooning classic rock. It was just the four of us, Alara, me, Jonas, and Lila, celebrating the win over beers and wine. The seniors left early, citing early mornings, leaving Alara and me alone at the bar, the amber lights casting soft shadows across her face. "You didn't have to stay," she said, swirling her glass of Merlot, her eyes catching the light. "But I'm glad you did." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, my beer cold against my palm. The bar was quieting down, the bartender polishing glasses in the corner. We talked, about the pitch, about art, about the little things that made Elmwood feel like a bubble outside the world. She opened up about a trip to Florence years ago, before Apex, when she was still married. "It was stunning," she said, her voice soft, "but I felt invisible, even standing in those ancient streets." "That's hard," I said, leaning closer. "Feeling like that, even in a place like that." She nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "You get used to it, or you try to." Her eyes met mine, and there was that rawness again, the same vulnerability I'd seen in the break room. I told her about my dad's workshop, how I'd spend hours tinkering with him, not because I loved fixing things, but because it was our time. She listened, really listened, her gaze steady. "You're different, Harlan," she said suddenly, her voice low. "Most people your age are chasing noise, parties, trends. You're grounded. It's rare." My face warmed, and I ducked my head, sipping my beer to cover it. "I don't know about that, just trying to figure out where I fit." "You'll find it," she said, her tone certain. "I can see it." We stayed until closing, the conversation flowing easier than it should have. Outside, the night air was cool, the streetlights pooling on the pavement. I walked her to her car, a silver sedan parked a block away, my hands shoved deep in my pockets to keep them still. "Thanks for tonight," she said, unlocking the door. "It's been a while since I just talked like this." "Any time," I said, meaning it more than I should have. She paused, one hand on the handle, and looked at me. "Harlan, I—" She stopped, her breath catching, then tried again. Forget I'm your boss for a second. That smile, soft and unguarded, flickered across her face. Just know I'm glad you're here. My heart slammed against my ribs. I wanted to step closer, to say something reckless, but the weight of her role, her age, the impossibility of it all pinned me in place. I'm glad too, I said, voice barely steady. She slid into her car, and I watched her taillights disappear down Beckman Street, standing alone under the sodium glow, my breath visible in the chill. The next week was a tightrope. Work was normal. Meetings, revisions, coffee runs. But every interaction with Alara carried an undercurrent. Her glances lingered. My pulse jumped when she passed my desk. Once, handing her a printout, her fingers brushed mine deliberately, a slow drag that left my skin buzzing. I started staying late, hoping for another moment alone. She did too, finding excuses, last-minute edits, quick reviews. We were circling something, and we both knew it. Midweek, she asked me to help with her nonprofit logo, a personal project. It's off the clock, she said, her tone casual but her eyes searching. If you're up for it. We worked in the break room, the office dark except for our corner. Pizza boxes piled up as we sketched and debated colors. She opened up more, about the loneliness of her divorce, the weight of running Apex alone. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever feel connected again, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. You will. You're not alone in this. Her eyes locked on mine, and for a moment the professional mask slipped entirely. Harlan, she said, her voice trembling, why do you stay late? You don't have to. My mouth went dry. I could have lied, could have said it was the work, but I didn't. Because I like being around you, not just the job. You. Her lips parted, and she looked away, her fingers tightening around her pen. You can't say things like that, she said, but it wasn't a rebuke. It was almost a plea. Why not? I asked, my voice quieter now, testing the edge. She stood, pacing to the window, the lights of Elmwood sparkling beyond. Because I'm your boss. Because I'm older, Harlan. Because this... She gestured vaguely between us. It's not supposed to happen. But it is, I said, standing too, closing the distance. You feel it too, don't you? She turned, her eyes wide, unguarded, full of everything she'd been holding back. I do, she whispered. And that's what scares me. Her hand reached out, hesitating, then brushed my arm, the touch light but electric. She pulled back, her breath uneven, and for a moment, we stood frozen, the air between us alive with possibility. What happens next will unravel everything. She's about to make a choice that neither of us will forget. The words were out there now, suspended between us like a bridge we weren't sure we could cross. Alara stood by the window in the break room, her silhouette framed against the scattered lights of Elmwood twinkling in the night, her shoulders rising and falling with breaths that seemed too deliberate, too controlled. I could see the war playing out in her posture, the way her hands gripped the windowsill, knuckles paling slightly, as if anchoring herself against whatever pull was drawing us closer. The table behind me was still cluttered with our abandoned designs, half-eaten pizza slices cooling in their boxes, and empty coffee cups that bore witness to the hours we'd spent dancing around this moment. My heart hammered in my chest, a steady drum that drowned out the faint whir of the fridge in the corner. Alara, I said again, my voice quieter this time, laced with the uncertainty that had been building since that first stormy day. If this can't happen, why does it feel like it's already started? She turned slowly, her hazel eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that stripped away the layers we'd both been hiding behind. There was fear there, yes, but also a depth of longing that mirrored the ache in my own chest. For a heartbeat, we just stood, the silence stretching taut. Then she shook her head, a small gesture that carried the weight of all the reasons we shouldn't. "Because we're both adrift, Harlan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, cracking on the edges like thin ice. "It's easy to reach for something, someone, when the world feels empty. But this? It could unravel everything I've built." She glanced away toward the darkened office beyond, where shadows played across empty desks and silent computers. I didn't step back. I couldn't. The pull was too strong, rooted in those late nights, the shared laughs, the confessions that had peeled back our guards layer by layer. "Maybe it's more than just filling a void," I said, taking a tentative step forward, my shoes scuffing softly on the linoleum floor. "You've let me in, about your divorce, the loneliness, the way Apex became your armor, and I've been here listening, because it matters to me, not as your employee, but as Harlan, as me." The words felt exposed, vulnerable, like handing over a part of myself I wasn't sure I was ready to share. She was Alara Thorne, the woman who'd clawed her way through betrayal to create something solid, someone whose experiences dwarfed my own fumbling steps into adulthood. I was 22, still navigating the haze of uncertainty, and she was in her late 30s, carrying the quiet scars of a life fully lived. This shouldn't make sense, but standing there, it did. Her breath hitched, and she stepped closer, narrowing the gap I'd initiated. Her hand lifted, hesitating in the air before settling lightly on my chest, right over my racing heart. I could feel its frantic rhythm against her palm, betraying everything I tried to keep steady. "You're so young," she murmured, her eyes tracing my face as if memorizing it, her voice thick with unspoken regrets. "Full of possibilities I don't want to dim. I can't drag you into my complications, the firm, the expectations, the way people would look at us." "But you've already pulled me in," I said, my hand covering hers, holding it there. Her skin was warm, soft against the fabric of my shirt, and the simple contact sent a current through me, grounding and electrifying all at once. We were inches apart now, close enough that I could see the faint flecks of gold in her eyes, the way her lips parted slightly with each breath. She was beautiful in that moment, not despite her age, but because of it. The maturity that lent her and quiet allure, a depth that made my pulse stutter. The silence enveloped us, heavy and alive. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, she leaned in. Her forehead rested against mine, a tentative connection that felt more profound than any words could convey. Her breath mingled with mine, warm and uneven. "Forget I'm your boss," she whispered, echoing those earlier words, but now without the shield of a smile. It was raw, a surrender to the tide we'd both been fighting. "Just for this night." My free hand rose, cupping her cheek, my thumb brushing gently across her skin. She didn't pull away. Instead, her eyes fluttered closed, and she tilted her head just enough. Our lips met in a kiss that started soft, exploratory, like testing the fragility of what we'd built. But it deepened quickly, fueled by the pent-up tension, the accidental touches, the lingering glances, the confessions shared in hushed tones. Her arms wrapped around my neck, drawing me closer, and I held her waist, feeling the subtle curve of her body press against mine. It was overwhelming, a rush of warmth and need that blurred the lines of right and wrong. We parted after what felt like an eternity, both of us breathing raggedly. She rested her head on my shoulder, her fingers clutching the fabric of my shirt as if afraid to let go. "This is madness," she said, her voice muffled against me, a mix of wonder and worry. "I know," I replied, my hand stroking her back in slow circles, trying to soothe the storm inside us both. "But it feels real, doesn't it?" She lifted her head, her eyes glistening in the low light, vulnerable in a way that twisted something deep in my chest. "It does," she admitted. and that's what terrifies me. Harlan, if word gets out, the team, the clients, my reputation, your future here, we're not equals in this. I nodded, the reality settling like a weight on my shoulders. She was right. The age gap, the power dynamic, it was a minefield. People would whisper, judge, question motives. But in that break room, with the world outside reduced to distant city lights, those concerns felt distant, surmountable. Then we keep it between us, I said, though the words tasted naive even to me. Figure it out step by step. Her smile was sad, tinged with a tenderness that made my heart ache. You're an optimist. I wish I could borrow some of that. She stepped back slightly, her hand trailing down my arm before dropping away. Pacing to the table, she picked up a stray pen, twirling it absently, a habit I'd noticed during stressful meetings. After the divorce, I swore off complications, focused on the firm, on stability, and then you walk in, eager, talented, with this quiet strength. You make me feel alive again. Seen. I leaned against the counter, watching her, the way the light caught her hair, the subtle grace in her movements. You do the same for me, I said. Before this internship, I was lost, just going through motions. You've given me direction, belief in what I can do. We sat then, at the table, pushing aside the remnants of our work to make space for the conversation that followed. It flowed deeper than before. She spoke of her ex's indifference, how it had eroded her confidence, how Apex had been her rebirth. I shared my own fears, of never amounting to anything, of the pressure to prove myself in a world that felt indifferent. Her hand found mine across the table, her thumb drawing slow patterns on my skin, a simple gesture that anchored me. As the clock inched past midnight, fatigue crept in, but neither of us wanted to end it. I should head home, she said finally, but her grip on my hand tightened, contradicting her words. Stay a bit longer, I replied, squeezing back. She did. We moved to the small couch tucked in the corner, her head resting on my shoulder, my arm draped around her. No more kisses, just a quiet intimacy that felt profound in its simplicity. She talked about her nonprofit dreams, helping women rebuild after loss, and I offered ideas, feeling like we were sketching a future together, however tentative. Eventually, the night's weight pressed down. Harlan, she said, sitting up, her voice resolute but soft. We can't repeat this. Not here. Not in a way that risks everything. The words stung, but I understood the caution. What about outside? Away from all this? She hesitated, then nodded slowly, her eyes searching mine. Maybe. But carefully. This thing between us, it's delicate, like glass. We gathered our things in a hushed routine, the office feeling smaller, more intimate in the late hour. At the door, she turned to me, her expression a blend of gratitude and uncertainty. Thank you for seeing me, the real me. I brushed a kiss to her forehead, light and lingering. Thank you for letting me. She left first, her footsteps echoing down the hall, her car engine fading into the night as I watched from the window, the cool glass against my palm. Alone in the empty office, a whirlwind of emotions swirled, elation at the connection, dread at the complications ahead. The next day dawned surreal. Walking into Apex, everything appeared unchanged. Mira fielding calls, the hum of creativity in the air, the scent of fresh brew from the break room. But when Alara stepped out of her office, our eyes met across the space, and a secret understanding passed between us, warm and hidden. Morning, Harlan, she said, her voice even, professional. Ready for the new brief? Ready, I replied, matching her composure, though my heart skipped. We navigated the day with careful normalcy, discussions, emails, brief nods in passing. But during a quiet lunch hour, with the team out, she slipped into the break room where I sat with a sandwich. "Last night," she began, closing the door softly behind her. "I know," I said, standing. "No regrets?" She shook her head, stepping closer, her presence filling the space. "None. But we need boundaries. No chances at work." "Agreed," I said, though the air between us hummed with the memory of her touch. In the weeks that followed, we treaded carefully, carving out stolen moments beyond the office walls. A quiet coffee at a tucked-away cafe on Harlan Street, named ironically after some long-forgotten founder, or walks along the redwood trails that bordered Elmwood, where the ancient trees whispered secrets of their own. Each encounter deepened the bond. She shared her vulnerabilities, the fears that kept her guarded, and I opened up about my uncertainties, the pressure of youth in a demanding world. But challenges arose, as they always do. Whispers in the office, nothing direct, but Jonas's offhand joke about my time in her office made us wary. Her ex resurfaced with a call, stirring old doubts. "He wants to talk reconciliation," she confessed over dinner at a secluded bistro on Vale Road, her fork pushing food around her plate. "But that's not my path anymore." A surge of protectiveness rose in me. "You deserve more. Someone who sees you fully." She reached across, her fingers lacing with mine. "I think I've found that." Reality bit harder with a demanding client, pulling us into long hours that limited our time. One evening, in her office after hours, we faltered, a swift kiss that nearly exposed us when Mira returned for forgotten items. "Too close," Ilara said afterward, her face ashen. "We have to pause, for safety." It hurt, a sharp ache, but I nodded. We retreated, channeling energy into work. I poured myself into projects, earning nods of approval, but the absence of her closeness left a void. The shift came with a major account win. Ilara hosted a gathering at her home on Crestview Drive, a cozy house with views of the rolling hills, its living room filled with laughter and clinking glasses. As the evening waned, the team departed, and I stayed to help tidy, stacking plates in the kitchen sink. She turned to me amid the remnants, her eyes steady. "Harlan, I can't do halves. It's all in or nothing." "Then all," I said, closing the distance. She pulled me into an embrace, her arms wrapping tight. "But the firm, I can't mix roles like this." The next day brought resolution. A promotion to junior designer, reporting to Jonas now. It wasn't flawless, but it leveled the ground. We eased into openness, first with the team, who responded with surprising warmth. "Finally," Lila teased with a grin. Reactions varied. My mother fretted over the age difference, her friends arched brows, but we forged ahead, building on that initial spark. Months later, on a trail amid the redwoods, the sun filtering through towering branches, I knelt. "Will you?" "Yes," she said, tears shining, pulling me up.